The hidden cost of AI. Are there any trade-offs? Are you really leaving gains on the table by using AI and not learning the fundamentals of software engineering? Now, in this video, I'm just going to talk about some of the trade-offs that could potentially happen with AI if you've been using it heavily. There's so many AI tools out here today that a lot of developers are using, and it's getting a lot of things done a lot faster. But the more you use it, you're going to notice some atrophy on certain things if you're not keeping up with your skills. So, what we're going to talk about are a couple things that you could potentially run into with AI, some of the pros, some of the cons, and some of the things that you should look into to improve with AI and not use AI as a crutch for everything that you're doing on a day to day basis as a software engineer. All right. So, the first thing I really want to hit home here is the reality. The reality is AI is here. Okay. AI is doing a lot of great things. It's getting things done a lot faster. It's giving people a lot of information that they don't have to scour the internet for. And you don't really have to do much when it comes to just asking a question and getting the answer back. And depending on that, it depends on your judgment whether it's going to be feasible or if it's not what you're looking for. And you could reprompt to get the answer that you're looking for. So there are a lot of AI tools that are being used heavily. As a software engineer, as myself, I use mostly Codex now for all of my AI needs when it comes to building out features, building out architecture for a project, trying to figure out what's the best way to go about implementing a backend architecture to then feed that into like the front end and have everything scale in one go. That's how I approach coding now. It's not about setting up the boilerplate, writing code all the time. Now you have an assistant, a virtual assistant that could help you get your thoughts together, right? Like, say if you're trying to whiteboard something and you can't really pinpoint what you should start with first versus how everything should flow to the next step and the next, you could use AI to validate your logic. You could use AI to validate your approach to building a project or solving a problem. And this has been a game changer for me, and I bet for a lot of you developers out there that are taking it to the next level. So there's a lot of AI tools out there now. We got ChatGPT, Cursor, Copilot, Claude, Codex. You name it. If it's helping you with your day to day as a programmer, you are probably using one of these tools. And the productivity gains are real. You're noticing a lot of time being saved because you're using AI to fast track your progress. And even though that's all great, there are some issues with that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And that's some of the costs of using AI as everything that you're doing day to day. If you look at this, like it's a fast turnaround now. I remember working on a project that would take me about 2 to 3 weeks max just to get done. And it could be from a medium sized project to a very large project to where I spent a lot of time understanding exactly what I need to build, understanding the requirements, understanding what is already created now that I could use to fast track my progress a lot faster, right? And now, with AI, you could do everything in like hours instead of like weeks. So that's a win there. But then, you know, as you continue to use AI from month to month and you're not really analyzing the code, you're not really questioning the code that's generated and whether you could make some changes to it on the fly or whether that's going to be able to scale. Now you're raised with the question is, could I rebuild it? Right? Like, can I rebuild this without AI? And a lot of the answers for some of you is probably going to be no, I can't. Right? You could probably build like small features here and there, but when it comes to like the more complex things, then you're at a loss. And that's just the reality of it. So like the more you use AI, the more you're going to go into this loop of, hey, I'm getting everything done a lot faster, but can I actually rebuild this or actually refactor the code so that it's improved, right? If you can't do that, then we got a problem. So because we're saving on time and we're building out a lot of features relatively quickly and we're getting apps and projects up there like a lot faster. Yes, this is great, but then we need to make sure that the code has standards and that it actually works as intended. All right. So here's where the problem lies: the shallow understanding, okay, of what is being generated. And I've ran into this personally with working on projects, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, why would AI go this route even though we have standards in place, right? Like, why did it add all this extra code when we could do it in like 2 to 3 lines? And this is where being experienced will save you a lot of time and headache of reprompting and opening up new chats just to get the answer that you want. All right. So even though the code is being generated a lot faster, your understanding lacks a little bit, right? If you're just accepting every single code change without reviewing it, you are not understanding the fundamentals of software engineering. You're not understanding the fundamentals of what makes code good and feasible. Okay. If you're just allowing AI to take the lead and build things out just because you gave it explicit instructions on how to format code, how to structure it, and it comes back with some BS, now you're in trouble. Now you got to reprompt and have a fight with AI to do the things that you wanted to do. And it's easy for a beginner to mess this up, right? To fall into this trap to where they're using AI to get an app up and running, they're building everything a lot faster. But when it comes to like an actual fundamental skill of understanding what the logic is and how you want to architect your application and you don't know the answer, you're going to go through a battle of relying on AI to give you that answer. Okay. And try to learn from that. But honestly, you can't really bet everything on AI because it could lead you down the wrong path and you're going to run into scalability issues. You're going to run into vulnerabilities in your app. I mean, there's so many different things that could go wrong by you not questioning what AI is doing. You're going to have this false sense of being competent, like you know what you're doing, when in reality, you really don't know what you're doing except accepting code generation. Like that's not how AI should be used as especially as a software engineer. All right. We want to get things done a lot faster, but we also want to question the things that are being generated and whether it's in scope of what you're working on. So the reality is in a real scenario, you're just pasting code thinking that is going to work. If it's an auth flow, you can't really answer the question, why do you have a JWT in this part of the code? Like, what is a JWT, right? Like, if you can't even answer that, like, you're going to look stupid. So, my advice to you is always review what AI is generating. Don't just accept everything under the sun because you will run into problems. And as a senior engineer, I've ran into this multiple times with projects. Even though the code works, you know, now you're dealing with a lot of bloat. Now you're dealing with a lot of just unused code that shouldn't have been generated in the first place. So having that wherewithal to question things will make it easier for you to solve these problems a lot faster, build things a lot quicker, get applications up and running. Once you understand the core of what AI is doing in the software and fundamentals, it should be easy enough for you to get things done relatively quickly, and you should have the confidence to do so. Having no context will cause a lot of issues. All right. But once you have enough context, you should be able to get things up and running smoothly. And with that, as you're building things and you're creating things, the art of debugging is needed. It is a skill. Whatever AI generates is going to come with some small bugs or some caveats or some edge cases. You need to understand this wholeheartedly. All right. Now, I'm not saying you need to be perfect with this, but at least test to make sure everything is working smoothly. When you're reviewing data logs, right, this is the essence of debugging. If you are running into an API issue, what should you do? You should look at the logs to see what kind of error message that you're getting. What is happening? Is this API not set up correctly? These are the questions that you need to ask yourself before, doing additional things and rewriting and refactoring code, because it's not that. It could just be something very simple that you could edit within your code and you should be good. Okay? You need to understand the problem, the core of the problem. If you are getting a 502 error, what does that mean? Is it an issue with the back end, or is this something to do with your client? These are the things that you need to understand. And the errors that you get from the client to the back end should give you the big picture. It could be something that's malformed in the data that you're sending to the back end. There's so many different scenarios, but once you understand it, then you're able to solve that problem easily by yourself, not with AI. And even though you could create unit tests to test the client and make sure everything is working fine, and you run it through the pipeline and you get everything's passed with those unit tests, there could be a critical bug that you could find in production. And this happens. AI is not perfect. And you need to understand that even with unit tests, you could tell AI to create better unit tests for the features that you're building, but you need to go through and make sure that it's actually going through the functionality of that feature, like the core functionality. If it's not even doing that and it's just looking at the small little things, this is where you need to change your approach. The more bugs that you have with all these unit tests passing and all that stuff, now you have to go about creating stories for those, creating tickets to fix these issues, when you could have just prompted the right things in the beginning and actually figure out what is feasible and what's not. And also, if you're dealing with production issues, it would suck to wake up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning to deal with that. And I know some of you guys have done that before. So if you want to mitigate that as much as possible, mitigate that risk, please understand debugging and understand what is generated by AI is not actually correct. Code ownership is very important. Now, even though you've built something doesn't necessarily mean that you did it by coding it yourself. You're using AI to do it. So like, who owns that architecture? If you can't understand the architecture or even explain the code that's being generated, right? In a code review, so if you got a PR up and you're like, hey, I got this feature up, like finished, I got the code generated and all that, but you can't really explain what's in that code for that feature, that's a problem. That is a major problem. And also, if it breaks, can you fix it? This is very important too, because it would suck to have a production issue at 1 o'clock in the morning and you can't fix it. And God forbid AI goes down. And this has happened before with Claude. It hasn't happened with me with Codex, but I had to figure out, okay, what do I have to use next? Or even try to fix it myself. So this is where understanding how things work, how it breaks, and what's the potential solution is crucial. Now, the real scenario in this case is like during code review, if you can't answer the question of what this function does or how this feature works, you're going to prompt AI for that answer to give you the breakdown. And it might be correct, it might not be, right? We're going through like a whole loop of this AI loop. Now, the accountability factor here is that, you take ownership of the code that you wrote. You understand fully of what's being generated, whether it's by AI or by yourself in your IDE, of what this feature is doing, how it works, how there's could be potential edge cases or bugs, how to solve that problem. And then also, with this new wave of AI, now the accountability is with AI, any AI tool that you're using. So you can't really take credit for building something when AI did all the work. Now you could prompt it and give it the instructions to do it, but at the same time, if you can't reliably read the code in a good way, right? If you can't reliably do that, then we got another problem. So with that being said, those are the costs of AI just relying on it solely, right? Like where you're not being challenged, you're not really taking the lead and fixing things when AI is getting it wrong, and then training it so that it knows not to make that mistake again. So in that regard, what would an experienced engineer do? What would I do as a senior engineer? What would I do? Listen, I would use AI to move a lot faster. I would use it to validate the logic. I would use it to validate my plan for a particular project. I would give it as much information as possible for how I'm going about building an architecture. And then from there, have it poke holes in my implementation plan. If it was to tell me, hey, we can't go with this approach with using queues because it's going to bog down the system, or we can't be using a store procedure for this, we should just do everything inline, then I will have to change my mind on that and actually use it and then test whether it's feasible or not of what AI recommended. Okay. That's how I use it today. Like if it's something very small, I would just do it myself because I know that I don't really need to rely on AI. Now, if it's super complex, I would just have AI do the boilerplating, getting everything set up, and then I could start to put the pieces together. I like to understand the business value. What's the business logic? Why is this important, right? What is the business need that we're trying to solve? If I understand the requirements as best as I can, I could then prompt AI to do the correct things. And just copy and pasting requirements based on what a product manager has written is not going to help you in that case. And I always judge the output. The quality of the code is very important. All right. Not the quantity of it, because you can have a lot of BS code in there. And now you got to go back and trace what function is doing what, like why is this feature working this way? It gets really annoying. So like having full control of how the code is being written and how it's fundamentally set up will help you with any project going forward. So that's very important with the fundamentals. You need to understand that. The real scenario in this case is, say, for example, if I'm trying to figure out the best way to use, for example, feature flags, whether it's server side or client side. How do I go about doing that? And I will work with AI to kind of build out a plan to do it and use it for whatever backend language that I'm targeting to see if I can evaluate those flags in a certain way and use it to conditionally show a new flow that I'm working on versus a no flow. So if you go through that process of prompting with AI and giving it feedback, you should be able to understand how feature flags work, how to go about using it for the back end and the front end, and then tying all that stuff together. So if you're able to do that, you should be fine. But just relying on AI to give you the answers and picking the first option is most likely is wrong. All right. So you got to use your best judgment here. You can't just rely on AI to give you the top answer because it won't, trust me. And AI offers you a lot of potential options. That's the beauty of it. But if you don't see through the bullshit, you're gonna pick a bunch of AI tools that promise certain things, and you're gonna be in this infinite loop of reprompting and trying to get the right answer. So there's that. Now, there is risk of atrophy as an engineer. There's risk of basic coding fundamentals that you're not going to need anymore. I haven't really coded anything like major in months after going with this new AI approach. Am I happy about it? Yeah, a lot of the boilerplating and a lot of the BS that goes with setting up features, I don't have to worry about anymore, especially with dealing with front end features where I had to deal with CSS and get everything pixel perfect. That's annoying. Now I don't have to deal with that anymore. I just have AI do its thing. I review the designs, and if it looks good, then I just accept it, right? But the value now is in system design, debugging, product thinking, communication, and architecture. This is where the value is with AI today, not just writing code. You could write code, you could be a great coder and write code and all that stuff. But if you don't understand systems, if you don't understand how to debug issues when they come up, or even think at a business level and communicate that to other people so that everybody else is on the same page on the architecture and everything else, listen, there are that's going to help you with your skills, and then also is going to help you with just getting things done. All right. So the real scenario in this case is that you're going to be anybody could build a CRUD architecture, right? Which stands for create, read, update, and delete, right? Anybody could build that, whatever language that you choose. But that would take a bunch of engineers to do it, depending on the architecture. Now with AI, all you need is one experienced engineer and an AI tool. Give it the right information, and then it's going to give you the blueprint for that architecture. So there's less to kind of worry about in this case. and it's more about like how everything should be wired in correctly. And the last thing I would just want to talk to you guys about is, when we're talking about AI and the hidden cost of it and how it could be detrimental to your success as an engineer, in some cases, here's the best way to use it effectively. So the way I would use AI and did every day, right, is to explain unfamiliar code and logic. This is very important here. This is where I need to understand, okay, I've never seen how this code is used anywhere else in our code base. Like, what is the best way? Why is this being chosen, and what problem is this solving? Right? Like, if I understand that, we should be good. And then AI will give me a breakdown of why it chose this particular code snippet, and then based off that information, I could then make better judgment in terms of whether I want to keep it or not. Right? Also, generate quality unit tests. Unit tests is very important when you're building a feature. So, say for example, you got a feature up and running, but then you have no unit test, there could be a critical bug in that feature. There could be small little things that people are going to report, and now you got to fix it anyway. It might not be returning the correct data. So you want to have unit tests go through every single scenario that this feature could do and make sure that is actually working. So you could have AI just generate quality unit tests around the core functionality of that feature. I use it to validate what I'm thinking and what I'm trying to propose. Some of the assumptions is that, if I really don't like this requirement for what we're trying to solve, I would work with AI to kind of go through other areas of my project and then give me valuable feedback in terms of whether this is needed or not, right? So that will cut down a lot of my time building things and then also keep everything in a clean path, right? When it comes to building out a feature. Now, this also, I use it to improve my communication when I'm demoing things. I would have AI generate a document of what I built based on the code, and then tailor it to how I would say things, and then make some adjustments to that. And then when it comes to presenting it, I have the information right in front of them so they could read through it themselves. And then also I have a working demo to show them the capabilities of what I'm trying to propose. Makes it super easy without having to do everything on your own and waste a bunch of brain power to do that. And then the last thing is just getting a project up and running a lot faster. You don't really need to install a bunch of dependencies on your own anymore and then copy and pasting code just to kind of get things up and running. AI could do this for you in minutes now. So this is very important. I actually love AI for doing this. So like as long as I have the shell of a project, now I can start putting the pieces together. Okay? And then also writing edge cases and writing tests for those edge cases. Explaining exactly what needs to be refactored to is crucial. Now, the leverage today is that, you know, before you're using AI as a crutch, right? Like you're using AI for everything. But now, after I've explained some of the things that you could be using with AI, you could use it as a multiplier for your day to day. Like at any time you're spending 8 hours trying to solve a problem, now you could cut that down to like maybe half, even with correct prompting skills. So that's it. I mean, the hidden cost of AI is that if you rely too much on it, you're going to run into a lot of problems. You're going to atrophy, and you're just going to rely on, you know, a prompt to give you the answer and accept all the code. Now, I know some of you developers are just doing that, like vibe coding and all that stuff. That's fine, but as long as you understand what is being written and actually question things, you should be in a good spot. I'm not saying that it's the worst thing in the world. I actually agree with AI, but it's just more of how people are using it today. And then they realize, like, well, I'm not really solving any problems. I'm actually causing a lot of headache by fixing what AI is doing. It's because you didn't really prompt and understand exactly what needs to be done. Once you have that understanding, you should be fine. Because I can tell you right now, I've been using it for a long time and I've been making progress. So that's it, guys. That's the video. Like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Do you think that AI is actually helping you with your progress, or are you noticing that you're atrophying a lot when it comes to solving problems or even coding on your own, right? And it's okay if you are. It's easy to get back on track, right? Once you atrophy, you should be able to get that muscle memory back. If you need a mentor, you can reach out to your boy. There's a link in the description. You could book a 15-minute consultation with me to see if we're a good fit. If you really are interested, you could book an hour call with me, and we could set up that call and talk. All right. Talk soon.